Hello, welcome to everyone who's watching, especially you. Today we are going to react to, and excuse me while I just butcher his name, Swami Sarvapriyananda. Please tell me how to pronounce it properly. This teacher has been suggested by a couple of you. Now, I noticed there has been a few suggestions for spiritual teachers who begin with Swami, so please leave me a comment and explain to my ignorant Western brain, what does the term Swami mean? I want to share my appreciation with you for all your comments on my last video. The party who says they were my 70th subscriber, thank you so much, appreciate it. Sudarshan, who subscribed and sent love from Mumbai. I love hearing where you're all watching from, that's super cool. Okay, so how to focus mind under difficult circumstances. Let's get into it. Experiencing bliss.
How do we focus our minds? This focus of the mind is actually very important for success in the world and in spiritual life also. Swami Vivekananda said, the difference between an ordinary person and a great person lies in the degree of concentration. And he himself had extraordinary powers of concentration. So focus of the mind is necessary for anything and everything in life. Now, the yogic approach, the Raja Yoga or Patanjali Yoga approach, that is the science of concentration par excellence.
Guys, can you leave me a comment? What were those two types of yoga he mentioned? I didn't quite get that. Thank you.
In fact, in modern positive psychology, they have studied this focus of mind, concentration. One psychologist said that the quality of your life depends on how much you can concentrate and what you concentrate on. Not just how much you can concentrate, what you concentrate on.
That's true, because we can all concentrate for a long time on Netflix, right? But that's not adding anything to the quality of our life.
Actually, this lady who wrote the book Rapt, R-A-P-T, Rapt, she's talking about a cancer patient who suffered a lot and decided that she would not keep her mind on suffering anymore, because it's inevitable that suffering is going to come. Rather, she's going to devote her mind to her art.
I've actually heard, do you guys know Eckhart Tolle? He's more of like a Western teacher, I guess. But I remember him talking to someone who had a chronic condition, a terminal illness, and he was telling them not to try and talk too much about it and not to focus on it, not to talk too much to other people about it when they ask, you know, how you're doing and stuff, because that really can fuel what he calls the pain body, I believe, and almost fuel the condition in itself. So it's interesting to hear Swami talk about a similar thing.
Or writing, I think. And as she learned to do that, she found the quality of her life became better. In fact, subjectively she was happier than before cancer. So she says that what you think about. So am I thinking about my writing and art, or am I thinking about the pain and the cancer and the co-payments and so on? What am I thinking of? Where do I put my mind? And how much of the mind I can put on that? Milton said in Paradise Lost, the mind in its own place can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven.
That's quite like a stoic thing to say as well, if you've studied stoicism at all. There's one quote, I can't think even who says it, but it's basically it's kind of like there's no such thing as a problem, only thinking makes it so. Whoever knows what that actual quote is, let me know in the comments. But it's that kind of just, our mind makes our reality, and it can make it positive or negative.
So it has been studied. A classic book in this regard is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's Flow. You're aware of that book? Yeah. So he has studied this phenomenon of attention and its link with the quality of life. And in fact, he mentions Patanjali Yoga there. He says, the best methodology that I have seen for for attainment of flow is in this ancient technique of Patanjali Yoga. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes.
So that's one method by Patanjali Yoga. That's the method of concentration, where you train your mind to think of one thing and keep on excluding everything else, bringing your mind back to that thing again and again. And there's a whole science in it. In fact, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi there he points it out that it's basically a function of two things. One is the challenge posed by the environment, and other is your skill. He gives an example. Suppose you're playing tennis. When you begin to play tennis, it's a great thing just to return a serve. So all your energies and your concentration, focus, you're all aroused and ready to face the challenge, and if you're able to return the serve, that is, you attain flow there. But that flow point, it's a match between the challenge and your skills. Your skill is exactly up to that level. But then this point of flow is dynamic. After some time, what happens is, if you keep just returning a serve, it becomes boring after some time because your skill has now exceeded the challenge. Now you need to up the challenge. So maybe you need to play a game. Then you maybe need to play a game against a good player, and so on. So this flow, focus, is a question of challenge and skill.
I think this is almost similar again to something I've heard Eckhart Tolle talk about. He's very much focused on, obviously the power of now and staying in the present moment. And he says that's why a lot of people do adrenaline sports, because your focus has to all be in one place, and being super present in that moment is sort of a relief, I guess, from your everyday, and that's like a flow state. And the same with things like driving. When you're learning to drive, you have to be really concentrated on the road, and it takes all of your focus. But which I think is similar to what he was saying about returning the serve, but as you get better at driving, you may know, like, your mind just starts to wander everywhere and you lose that flow state. And I think that's sort of comparable to what he's saying about you need to find a better tennis player, because once you get to a certain skill level, you can't enter into that flow state as easily. You need to up the challenge.
Too much challenge, like in a workplace which is full of pressure, many people know in Manhattan it's like that. Then if your capacity is below the level of challenge, it leads to anxiety. Uneasiness, anxiety, strain. If the challenge is way below your skills, it leads to boredom. If they're well balanced, at that point you get flow, focus, what you're asking. What does that mean practically? Practically what it means is that if you want focus and flow, you need to increase the challenge to meet your abilities. If the challenge is beyond your abilities, the environment is putting too much pressure on your abilities, then you need to break it down into smaller chunks and deal with it one at a time, a little bit at a time, manageable bits at a time.
I think that's a good life lesson really for anything, really, isn't it? I find if a task is too big, it does become overwhelming to the point that you just don't even start it. But if you break it down into smaller bits and you think, oh, okay, well, that chunk seems manageable, then you can join all the chunks together and complete the bigger task. Whereas before it just seemed like you couldn't even get started because it was too out of your comfort zone, I guess.
That's in principle. It's easier said than done. But there are other things to consider also in focus.
Okay.
One thing is, one thing which scatters our minds is self-interest. If I am in it for myself, if my idea is that I am in it for this particular person, then always I'll be tense. What have I gained? What have I lost? How much do I get out of this? I'm not relaxed anymore. Selfishness leads to a scattered mind. It can lead to a kind of narrow focus on my own interests, but always it will be vulnerable and you're open to anxiety and fear and frustration. Unselfishness. The unselfish mind is relaxed mind. So the more you are about doing good to the organization you work for, the family unit you're with, or the community, or in general for others, you are relaxed about yourself. Or You are worshipping God in your actions. You're offering all of your actions up as worship of the Lord. It's not so much what I'll get out of it. Swami Ranganathanandaji said, what is spirituality after all? Simplest definition of spirituality. Most practical. He said, spirituality is, when I close my eyes, I find peace within. When I open my eyes, my attitude is, what can I do for you?
That's a nice definition. I've not heard that before, and I like it. There's so much, like, I read this book once. I have to look up the name of who wrote it. It was called Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, I think. And it kind of summed up, there's so much seeking to become like a spiritual person, or this, people expunge this, I'm a spiritual person. And we have to ask ourselves, like, what is really, I mean, I like that definition of like, what is spirituality? Because it's not about anything that you have to show to people, or it's not a label that you can give yourself. It's like he said, it is the inner peace and the service to the world, that the service you can give to other people.
With eyes open, what can I do for you? Here's the world, what can I give, what can I do? When I close my eyes, there is peace within. Our problem is just the opposite. Swami, when I close my eyes, all sorts of disturbance within. All sorts of thoughts, restlessness within. And when I open my eyes, not what I can do for you, what can I get from you? So this is just the opposite of spirituality. This is worldliness.
Worldliness is the opposite of spirituality.
So, unselfishness, to the extent that we can be unselfish, to that extent mind will be relaxed and better focused. The focus which comes out of selfishness is a narrow band focus, which leads to unpleasantness and tension and frustration. Another insight. Love leads to focus. So what I love, my mind automatically is drawn to that and easily focused, without all sorts of techniques. You don't have to do this breathing technique, this thing and that thing. It automatically leads to focus there.
And I think that's part of the reason why our school system, you know, I talk about school a lot because I'm not sending my kids to school, but kids will learn and focus on what they love at the time. It's exactly what he's saying, not what we tell them that they need to learn or tell them they should be interested in. It's so hard to get kids to pay attention or focus on those type of things, but you know, if you see a child who's become passionate about something, they will learn everything that they can be learned about that subject. It's not something that we can force on people to become interested in and learn about. And I think that's kind of encapsulated in what he's saying here.
So for example, a mother in a house looking after the young child, right? So
I am a mother in a house with young
because the mother loves the child. Yes. Because the mother loves the child, all activities are done. She's cleaning, cooking, taking care of the child's homework, getting ready to take the child to school, and so on. All of that is being done, and yet the mind is focused on the child and the needs of the child, right? So love leads to focus. Bhakti, devotion to God, leads to focus automatically and easily, without effort, effortlessly so. And one more thing, this is what we discussed today, no mind.
No mind.
When you realize that you are that one existence consciousness bliss, and all of this world is your appearance, then the mind remains calm and steady, like the unflickering flame. Look at the mind of that prince, the story of the princess of Kashi. The mind of the prince was disturbed and agitated. You will smile and say, unnecessarily so. For what? But that's exactly our condition. Unnecessarily so. For what? One Swami put it very funnily. He said, before we come to Advaita, our reaction to the world is, what? And after we get Advaita, our reaction is, so what?
Again, so can someone write that word down that he said before we come to... Is that enlightenment? Is that a way of saying enlightenment? Help a Westerner out here.
So that calmness, that relaxed, focused attitude, steady attitude comes from that. That is no mind. No mind is not thinking, not shutting down the mind. That is no mind. So these are some of the ways. If you have, those who are discerning, you would have seen, I basically talked about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Yeah, these are the ways. Thank you.
Well, I think that video has just highlighted to me how much I have to learn on this journey that we are doing together. But I love that. Thank you for you all who suggested it. I feel like I might need to go back and re-watch it to really let it sink in. But a lot of what he says did resonate with other things that I've heard. And I find that if you start finding, I sort of call them universal truths, you'll see things, the same ideas crop up in completely different scenarios, and I feel like that's when you sort of know that it must be kind of true, because it's being said in different contexts but the truth is still the same. I think someone said in my comments, like, this guy puts things in really simple ways that you can understand, and I agree with that. And do you know what, whenever I hear people talking about attention or concentration, it makes me think of Krishnamurti, because I've definitely read him talk about those in his books that I've read, and how it's not something that you can't tell people concentrate or pay attention to this, because that's not how attention works. So I think I definitely need to do a Krishnamurti reaction, because he is probably so far my favourite spiritual teacher that I've come across. Sorry, Sadhguru fans. Okay, my favourite comment from my last video, which was the Save Soil reaction so far. The greatest puja one can perform, being truthful to yourself. So said Sadhguru. This is a little hard to understand, he says. So, do you understand that? What's your interpretation of being truthful to yourself? Let's have a little discussion in the comments. Until next time, bye!